In March of 2014, 4 interviews were published in the Gold Sheet pertaining to the challenge then of breaches in assurance of data integrity. And the title of that issue was Confronting the Illusions of Quality in India. It was never a problem just focused on India. It's a worldwide problem then, but perhaps today it is a stark reminder that we have a challenge of mistrust in our institutions, which were designed to inculcate public trust. There is a growing concern that the data associated with the pandemic, integrity of data associated with the pandemic, which were responsibility of institutions such as CDC and FDA, are now in question. So, given that backdrop, what do I wish to share? What knowledge do I wish to share? What experiential learning do I wish to share is the question. Using March 2014 as a benchmark, what I see today is one effort, which is the opinion India's pharma industry's problem need to be fixed now, is the emphasis. Data integrity requires stronger local enforcement is sort of one aspect which is necessary but not sufficient in my mind, because how do we know that the local enforcement has the integrity that we need? Are they mature enough is the question. So I will continue my journey of empowering workers at the front line and to the top line to share 4 life science lessons from my journey within and without, what I call the PAT to QBD journey, and encapsulate that the experiential learning in a phrase which I'll call I SMART. Good morning. I'm Ajaz Hussain, and I wish to share my experiential learning using a tool or a technology which you also know and use on a daily basis: writing. Writing and self-authorship is a iSmart technology is the key take-home message I wish to leave behind with you so that you can use it to empower your development and to be self-authored. And why that is important today more than yesterday is the purpose of this discussion with you. The journey I'm talking to you about or going to narrate soon is recorded on social media, LinkedIn, Schrodinger's cat and my journey from 2015 to 2020 and beyond, and in my writings, which are available to you for your research. I will not be giving you solutions that you have to research and find the answers that work in your context. You have to take responsibility for research, and in practicing research on a regular basis, you will find wisdom in your practice. Valid opinion, valid legal certification, valid from a scientific perspective, is coming closer to the truth in terms of accuracy, validity of accuracy. When you think about validation of opinions, a legal mandate, and coming closer to the truth, accuracy, then we have a way to think about validation, process validation, which is an essential aspect of principles of good manufacturing practices or good practices across laboratory, clinic, and other professional activities. It provides us a way to think about mind and matter analogously, synergistically, and talk about internal validation for continuous professional development and validation life cycle management as a life cycle spiral. And that's what iSmart encompasses. iSmart, what is it? How do we pursue it? Why is it important now? Are the topics that are in my mind, which I hope to weave into my narration. iSmart, internal validation for continuous professional development and validation lifecycle management, is a long title for a presentation. What is the title? A heading, a brief summary of the matters it deals with. It is a legal document. It is a title we give to ourselves for the jobs, to describe the jobs we do, etc., etc., etc. Words have different meaning, and particularly words in English have nuanced meanings that can often be the opposite of the meaning we sometimes infer. SMART is an acronym. We call ourselves smart when we possess the characteristics of elegant, stylish quickness, ease of learning, alertness, resourcefulness. I want to focus on ease of learning, alertness, resourcefulness to define our objectives and select the technology we want to use to be smart in a smart factory, in a smart city, or when we use a smartphone, so that we are not enslaved by the technology. We use the technology for the purpose to be good. Internal validation are two words. Internal is to an individual, to the technology itself, to a corporation. It signifies something external to it, its stakeholders, its customers, its regulators, etc., etc., etc. Validation is to recognize or affirm the validity or worth of a person. It also means to declare legal something certifiable or good. It also means to prove accuracy. So when I look at internal validation, I see stages of adult human development where at earlier life stages, we want others to validate our opinions, our feelings. And once we are socialized into a corporate atmosphere, we want the regulators to declare what we are doing as legal. Good. But the other aspect of validation is to keep going closer and closer to truth, to prove accuracy of what we observe and the evidence we collect. So we want to do that continuously without interruption. And we want to do that professionally, because we declare ourselves to be skilled in an occupation. Occupying a position is not development. Development is to expand, to enlarge, and to refine. Nothing is perfect. Refinement means to improve, to correct and prevent errors from becoming mistakes. And therefore, we think about going through cycles, plan, do, check, and act cycle, or a life cycle of recurring sequences in the course of existence and experience of being alive. But if we only think about cycle, we tend to return back to the position we started from. To be effective managers, we want to take action to achieve goals of continual improvement, continuous professional development, and maturity. Those are the outcomes we are looking for. We have to spiral. We have to go beyond seeking validation of opinions to beyond seeking legal mandated stamp of approval to going closer to the truth, to be scientific in the practice of scientific method. SMART man, machine, and management are the three dimensions I wish to speak about. Human development, human life is in multiple dimensions: spiritual, political, and many other dimensions, which are not the primary focus of this talk. But the three aspects of smartness that I wish to talk about are management objectives: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound; the basis of corporate performance, annual performance assessment, individual performance assessment; and for machines, self-monitoring analysis and reporting technology; and for man, broadly, living human beings, being safe, modest, actionable research and testing of our assumptions, beliefs, etc. Some time ago, about a year ago, I believe, I wrote a paper entitled Smart Pharmaceuticals 2021 to 2030 in Express Pharma. So if you have access to these slides, if you click on that icon, it will take you to that paper. So Smart Cube, a path to iSmart, is the topic of interest to me, and I'm sharing with you my current thinking on this topic. Smart Cube, one way to envision that is an interaction and interrelated aspects of smart objectives, smart technology, and smart individuals. What makes us smart? Our development and maturity is an important component of our smartness beyond our education and training. So think about the interactions between our adult development, technology, maturity of the technology, and what we need to do to remain smart in any situation we find ourselves in, whether it is complex or complicated or simple. I want to place Smart Cube in the context of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act of 1938, which was precipitously enacted because of the elixir of sulfanilamide tragedy in 1937, which again has resurfaced today in a different context. In 1962, after the thalidomide tragedy, the Kaifa-Harris Amendment to the FD&C Act was enacted, and it required people who work in pharmaceutical development to have, it says, scientific training and experience to make decisions and to assure effectiveness fairly and responsibly. Clearly, effectiveness in that is effectiveness of the drug in the real world situation. Not, it is different from efficacy, which is measured under controlled clinical trial conditions with a placebo arm. In the real world effectiveness, there are no such controls. You have to deal with reality. And assurance, trust are the bridges that allow efficacy and effectiveness to be equivalent. So in that context, smart objectives, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely, that a corporation generally aims to establish for yearly performance assessment, to set the goals of the corporation, yearly goals and performance assessment. Think about maturity model for a smart factory. A smart factory goes from pre-digital, digital silos to connected plant to predictive plant to adaptive plant. Adaptive plant means it is responding to stimuli to adapt itself. And I started with a quote about complex systems being the goal there is to be self-monitoring, analysis, and reporting, so that each tool, each technology we use in a smart factory is able to be adaptive, and the system always produces outcome that is desired. But a complex system is a system where cause and effect relationships are not known, are known only in hindsight. So the notion that a complex system can be self-correcting is a challenge, and that challenge is also reflected in our own complexity of human life. Adaptive learning is a way to get to self-authored and to be self-transforming, to be adaptive ourselves. And how do we bring together the smart objective, smart technology, and to continually move towards that direction is the other part of smarts. We want to feel safe, we want to be modest, and we want to take actions that relate to the need to do further research and testing of our assumptions constantly. As a pharmacy student at the Bombay College of Pharmacy, I was thrilled to purchase the book called Theory and Practice of Industrial Pharmacy. Why so? And how has my experience changed over the years? Is something I think I want to talk to you about in the context of education, training, and experience, theory, practice, and epistemology. How do I know what I know? Why did I think that the book Theory and Practice of Industrial Pharmacy was such a fantastic book back then, and how do I think about it now? It's very different. And what was missing, I think, in that book is the understanding of mechanistic basis of how we granulate, how we do things. It was more descriptive. And at the same time, what was missing was it lacked the notion of observation to development, which I want to talk to you about. Similarly, I think regulatory guidance documents tend to be slow to evolve, and they tend to become over time consensus or least common denominator. And so you have to become one size fits all. So you have to be aware it's a Procrustean problem in prescriptive regulation. A regulatory a journey to clear my foggy brain was something I wrote in 2016, and I want to sort of build on that. Technical information in our practices today are often dated, and so we have to be aware of defaults in our system which may satisfy legal mandates but are no longer scientific in the current state of knowledge. And how do we update that is a major problem. And education and practical training that we undergo in our colleges as well as in a corporation tend to normalize and instill the default into our mind, but yet to improve we have to acquire new prior knowledge. And how do you do that? Adaptive learning, I think, is a key, and new prior knowledge sort of comes into an element of adaptive learning, which we have to then bring to consensus within our practices, within our policies, and so forth, and that can be a significant challenge. Overall, I would say the challenge, what is evident today is the propaganda that we see a lot around us, the fake news around us, and so forth. Follow the science screams every media, uh, but scientific method is what we follow. I don't follow the science. I work towards validating the scientific method in my practices. That's the key aspect that I wish you to think about. Regulatory defaults, such as scale up factor of 10x, prior approval supplement with stability batches, 3 batches to qualify for process qualification. These are defaults, and they may work for certain processes, and for certain processes they may not work. But we take the defaults as truth, and that has been a challenge which I have tried to correct. And it becomes a one size fits all or Procrustean approach to development. So validating subjective experience objectively has been a topic of interest of mine since the year 2014. But before that, the terms epistemology and Procrustean were in my mind, and I'm sharing with you a photograph taken at the end of ICH Q8 Step 2 discussion in Kyoto, Japan, November 2004. As this guidance came to Step 2, the rapporteur put a presentation together to acknowledge the progress, the challenges, and so forth. And one slide of that was acknowledgement of my contribution of bringing into focus during the discussions on the need for epistemology to make sure the guidance is not Procrustean, one size fits all, and to create space for science to thrive, called design space. And so since 2014, I've been trying to see why did I come up with those phrases? How did it happen? And now I think where those phrases originated were in the influence of Dr. Deming, who essentially outlined the need for theory of knowledge, epistemology, knowledge of variation, common cause, special cause variation, statistical process control, and suitability and capability or stability and capability of manufacturing processes. At the same time, he emphasized the need for appreciation for a system and psychology of change. So I have sort of pictured that on left and right side of the brain, the left side of the brain, which is now your right side of the figure, is theory of knowledge, knowledge of variation. Those aspects were incorporated in the regulatory guidance, but we did not appreciate the right side of the brain as much as we should have. Appreciation for a system, psychology of change. So in my experiential learning, I'm bringing a way to utilize our technical know-how in terms of process validation, quality by design, the plan, do, check, and act cycle that we go through in the material world into my mind so that I can validate my thinking process, my learning, experiential learning objectively. So validating mind matters. You start with valid definitions of input. You have to have valid processing of of your processes such as understanding and sense making. These are two distinct processes, and so that you can produce valid results, outputs, and nothing is perfect. So you need valid feedback to continually improve. If good is equivalent to valid in our practices, pharmaceutical practices, what does feeling good mean? Looking good, being good, doing good, and seeing good simultaneously. Let me explain. Adult human development continues over childhood development. And Professor Keegan, in his book In Over Ahead in 1994, outlined orders of consciousness, 5 orders of consciousness. The first order of consciousness is impulse control, second order imperialist mind, third order socialized mind, fourth order self-authored mind, and fifth order self-transforming mind. He also elaborated the characteristics of this in great detail and also put them in the context of the geopolitical situation we find ourselves in the post-truth world, in the postmodern world. And he argued that to function effectively in this level of complexity in this society today, we need to have a self-transforming mind. And unfortunately, the data that he has collected over the years suggests that most of us are stuck in a socialized mind. Few of us remain stuck in imperialist mindset, and unfortunately, the way our systems are, the imperialist mindset get promoted to become CEOs often, and because enslavement of us to profit is the objective of corporations most of the time, regardless of their mission and vision statements. And some of us struggle with anger. Anger management is impulse control. So how to progress from socialized mind to becoming self-authored to being self-transforming has been my interest. And since I do a lot of training in culture of quality, training for the front lines as well as the board of directors, I needed to have a very simple way of explaining the nuanced characteristics of these stages of development in a very simple, practical way. And the way I see that is looking good as a teenager, driven by our hormones as well as the peer pressures. We want to be accepted by a peer society, and looking good in a mirror as a grandfather, now looking back, and are two different experiences. Being good is normal, and we want to be part of a team, a part of a tribe, and that's the stage of development. Doing good when it matters is another stage of development. Doing good what is valid, and valid in this sense of coming closer to the truth, of proving accuracy, going beyond the legal mandates, going beyond opinions. And then seeing good is when you're insulted by somebody who has not accepted your proposal, or you have not accepted your opinion, to be able to use that as a feedback to say, what am I missing? What is, I may hate that person, I may hate that situation, yet it's a bad situation for me, yet there's a nugget of truth in it. So how do I derive valid feedback even from situations which are bad? I think is a key to think about that. So in that sense, these stages are nested within us. When I'm stressful, I may be I get angry. I can go up and down these scales. They're not my stability is defined on my ability to stay at a high level of consciousness and not fall down, and my capability is to continue to grow beyond looking good to being good to doing good. So in that sense, seeking external validation and experience within us as teenagers has to transform to be internally validated, to be self-assured, and that is where we want to go. You can only give others assurance with integrity when you're self-assured. Fake it till you make it is not good, is the key message. And one of the ways to traverse this journey is to pay attention to the meaning of words we use and how the meaning changes over time. So meaning making and manufacturing maturity was a column I used to write on a basis several years ago in Pharma Times. I try to capture the psychology of change, as in the orders of consciousness, into practical applications in a GMP setting in the front lines, and to make common sense of that. Process validation is the foundation upon which good manufacturing practices stand on. We have gone from, in the last 2 decades, from an opinion of 3 qualifying batches to, in 2011, for a life cycle approach to process validation. Yet today, we are still struggling with what is cleaning validation. Forget validation of emergency use authorized complex products. Installation qualification, operational qualification, process qualification, continued process verification are the stages of process validation that we came to consensus in 2011 on, at least in the US. How are we doing? How are we doing in applying those principles in our practices for new drug product development, new manufacturing process development? What about legacy products? What's the situation now? I think is an open question. How do you improve continually? And how does it relate to continuous development? Smart objectives, annual performance, product review, annual product review and reports. These are all parts of the system that we operate with. And aligning smart objectives with smart technology, with smart people, should improve annual performance review, make it more merit-based, objective, and link it to align it with the meaningful improvement needed that we find in annual product review. We don't pay attention to annual product review and reports, annual reports to FDA. They are hardly, we submit them for the basis of satisfying legal mandates, but we don't use them effectively. So thinking about process validation for sense making, for understanding, really is a way to think about going from theory and practice of industrial pharmacy I talked to you about, to observations and development, to moving away from counting experience as years on the job, to objectively measuring of experience as suitability and capability to be responsible, to be fairly and responsible for what we do, is really where we need to be. And where I see today is the reason I think at the core of the challenges in lack of trust in the institutions that are supposed to give public trust and protect public health is the institutions, not just the corporations, have failed to learn from experience. They have failed to make unbiased, non-theory laden observations, to improve continually, to change their, to be scientific in their update of mandates and emergency use authorization. And that's unfortunately will remain with us as a stark darkness which we will litigate over the years if our systems don't collapse before that. It would be that's how the dark situation is. To help you appreciate the importance of experiential learning and unbiased observations to professional development, I wish to share with you the struggles in the healthcare, so-called healthcare sector. And I titled this discussion, Fake It Till You Make It Is Not Good. Doctors are among the most educated, most trained individuals before they are licensed to practice. Years and years go in their ability to obtain license, and then they have commitment for continuing education to maintain their license. How has that sector performed? In 1999, while I was at FDA, we were thinking of the PAT initiative to start. In parallel to that effort, the Institute of Medicine, the highest authority of the medicine in the US, issued a report to err is human. And then in subsequent years, they have issued several reports. And two of them I want to cite is redesigning continuing education in health professions was the key. And in that 2010 report, they essentially said the continuing education system in the US has failed, and we need a redesign to continuous professional development, CPD. And in 2018, they came back to say that the answer to how to get there is to integrate design and systems thinking, a design thinking, a system approach to well-being within education and practice was that recommendation that came out. In the year 2018, the reports that were coming out since 2007 onwards accumulated that the consensus was medical errors as the third leading cause of death in America. And more recently, the report that I'm citing here is physicians experience imposter syndrome more than others. Fake it till you make it is not good. So if a sector which goes through years of education and training just to get permission to practice, license, is struggling in this, why? Because we underestimate complexity and we are in over our head. We have not focused on development. We have not focused on maturing. We have focused on education and training, theory and practice. We have not focused on the other part of it. And in a broader context, GDP refers to economic growth. We want to grow, grow, grow. But human development is assumed to occur because of growth. No, they are independent, they are orthogonal. Human development has been neglected. Human development index, if you look at that, Yes, economic growth is important to get us out of poverty, to be able to survive, have food, and able to then develop. So there is that relationship. But beyond that, once we have food and so forth to keep developing, we have to focus independently on human development. And Human Development Index is one measure of that, which is questionable how accurate that is. But where we are now is the systems are collapsing and our orders of consciousness are decreasing, and we will be struggling for survival for food. We will be struggling for food. That's a large population of the world will be struggling for food. So we are moving into a dark age. And in this time, we have to be the change we want to see in the world. And the only way to bring sanity back is that all of us are become self-aware, all of us become aware of the opportunity, the potential we have within us to develop ourselves through our experience and help each other to do the same. To err is human. What type of errors do humans commit? One way of looking at that is errors of omission and errors of commission. Not doing something you were supposed to do is an error of omission. Doing something you were not supposed to do is an error of commission. So when such errors occur in a system, in which individuals are supposed to have the scientific training and experience to be able to assess effectiveness fairly and responsibly, people with are supposed to have good practices and qualified for good practices based on education, training, or experience in a manufacturing settings, for example. How do it relate to objectives? How are the errors cascading up and down the cascading alongside the cascading objectives is an open question. Often the answer is to blame the poor analyst or the poor operator on the front lines and say it was a human error. And in pointing the error and placing the blame on the front line, the most vulnerable of among us, we remove the blame from ourselves. When we experience an error on the front lines, one has to think from a systems perspective. It occurred because of a system failure, and that system failure cascades up the chain to the board of directors, to the politicians who define the laws, and so forth. So effective error management aims at continuous reform, not local fixes. And we can do so when we expand our orders of consciousness and we are able to appreciate systems, and we understand that correction, prevention are often ineffective, and we understand the psychology of change. There is an experiential component which we cannot discount anymore. And that experiential adaptive learning component, up and down cascading objectives, is something that we have to focus on. And iSmart is a way of thinking that each one of us at every layer of the organization, at every hierarchical rail of the organization can experience to make common sense of. And that experience fractal is something which I think we need to think about. What is that experience fractal made up of? Many things possibly. From a GMP perspective, from a good manufacturing practice perspective, it is removing fear, expanding awareness, and mastering our practices in our practices. What comes first, removing fear or improving awareness? chicken and an egg problem. It depends where you are initially of what comes first for you. If you are in a situation which is not fearful, you're expanding your awareness first, or you're helping others expand awareness first. Or if you're in a situation where the fear dominates within a system, you have to bring a way to think about how do you first reduce the fear, remove the fear, so that your awareness can expand, and so forth. Beyond smart objectives, beyond smart technology, iSmart requires us to focus on internal validation. And in the process of internal validation, we continuously develop ourselves. Unmet cascaded objectives in a corporation is an opportunity for investigation, root cause investigation. If the answer is unknown, root cause unknown, it reminds us to ask why at every level of the hierarchy. When errors repeat, they become mistakes, and mistakes is a sign of immaturity. Recurring errors is a sign of an immature system, of immature people managing the system. So recognize that validation has to go beyond opinions, beyond regulatory mandates, to prove accuracy of your solutions, to get to the root cause, to have the relationship between cause and effect relationships mapped out, which were not mapped out perhaps in the development phase of a product development phase. Seeking external validation is a experience within us as teenagers, for example. And moving towards self-assurance is our becoming more suitable and capable for the challenges and the responsibility we take on. And to keep taking on increasing responsibility, we have to keep developing and maturing ourselves. And in the key component of the SMART trio is we have to feel safe. We have to be modest. We have to take actions, not just do, but take actions. And we have to commit ourselves to continually researching our assumptions and beliefs and testing those to verify their validity in as the context changes, as the complexity evolves. And so doing so, I think we have to recognize experience number one is to feel. We have to respect our feeling, and we have to think about overcoming the 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 desire to keep looking good, and to say that if I don't look, there is no problem, and to go beyond planning and doing to checking and taking action. Number three, one, two, three are the steps here. I hope you have now an appreciation for the three components of SMART Cube, which make up iSmart: safe, modest, actions, research, testing. The individual SMART component is something that I wish you to experience firsthand. Do it yourself. What I'm going to do next is to share with you some pharmaceutical examples which I have written about years ago. And for you to experience firsthand, you have to do your own research. Learning from someone else's experience is easier because it is safe. You're not making the mistakes. You're not in a situation that you have made a mistake and now you have to deal with the consequences. Learning from others' mistakes and others' approaches, others' experiences is a very important component. So these are others' experiences that I'm sharing with you. But to learn from their experience, you have to experience firsthand. I cannot give, if I give you all the answers, you will not experience it. It will be information and it will not be converted into knowledge because you have not done the information processing yourself. Therefore, here is one example which I want to share with you. Experience an emotional sensation feeling. First hand knowledge of state, situation, emotions, and sensations. So, for example, how to break the pharmaceutical 2 to 3 sigma barrier like Amgen was a report I published in 2017. And here in this report, I outlined how Amgen, which was like every other company, stuck in if I don't look, there is no problem. Things are FDA approved, things are validated. Were sort of comfortable in being socialized. That was a socialized mind. But within the corporation, there were leaders who said, no, we are here to serve the patients, and we cannot rely on FDA approved and validated. And if I don't look, there's no problem. It's not an acceptable option for us. And so they took steps to bring the entire community over to be able to solve problems locally and cascade the knowledge across the organization. And to do that, they had to overcome their immunity to change. Immunity to change is a term that Professor Keegan has also written about, and it involves overcoming the feeling system which holds you back, the fear, for example, change prevention system, the conflicting objectives that are there, and the change control which seems to be requiring too much work to be done, and so forth, and not knowing how to solve problems in a complex environment. Maturing is knowing and changing feelings, and changing the meaning of the words is a way to change feelings. Learning from others' experience is free. You just have to expand your awareness to be able to identify what experiences you can learn from. For example, here is an example of a devastating situation that occurred for companies like Sandoz, Vocard, Dr. Reddy's, and it was related to product failures and recalls of products because of poor validation considerations, etc. At the end of that event that occurred since 2007 to 2016 or so, FDA came out with a statement saying that the recalls were a result of company's own test. How can that be? I have looked at this problem from many different perspectives. I was at FDA, I was at Sandoz, but in a different part of Sandoz. I was at Vocard, again, different part of Vocard. I was advisor to Dr. Reddy's when this was occurring. And I was advisor to another company, IPCA, from a different situation where they had complete response letter after all these incidents had occurred, and also looking at FDA's own response in their quality sampling and testing programs, as well as the funding of research to academics to assess the products coming from India. So I think I've sort of looked at that, but you need to be aware of, expand your awareness. How can this be? Is when FDA approves, when the tests are compendial tests, and FDA insists on compendial tests to be used, and now FDA comes out and blames the test the results of company's own test. What does that mean? Are you aware of the situation? Are you aware? If you are not aware of this, now that you are aware of it, what can you learn from it? You have to do your own research. I have talked about this more extensively in another presentation which is available on YouTube some 2 years ago. So Pharma 4.0, Transforming Pharmaceutical Manufacturing, a 21st Century Pharmaceutical Quality Perspective, is a one. If you search for that and find it, you will hear more information about this. And there are other presentations that I have talked about in the context of my role at the National Institute for Pharmaceutical Technology and Education, and especially one called Industrial Policy and NIPT, my departing message, which was about a year ago. So do your research, find your answers, and experience to learn. Don't be afraid to ask, does it make sense? And take steps to make sense. And take further steps to make common sense within your community, within your teams, and so forth. Sense making is an important process, as is understanding, and each of these need to be validated internally. We go from a physical domain to information domain to cognitive domain, and crossing the information domain to cognitive domain is where we get to situation awareness. And once we are in the mind, we deal with our paradigm, mental models, our prior knowledge, and within those interactions and interrelationships emerges our understanding. But our emotions, beliefs, and perceptions, which are often not verified, validated, influences what we become aware of, what we think, how we think, and so forth. So you need to be able to take time out to think about these processes internally, and awareness, new prior knowledge when needed, understanding and sense making are processes that we validate internally. And I hope this chart will help you distinguish between understanding and sense making before our intentions are formed to do something that leads to planning, to action, and to keep going in this cycle. So if you keep going in this cycle, you will come back to the same place. Take a development stance to say, let me verify my prior knowledge, let me correct it. With new prior knowledge, you are at a higher stage. Let me deeper have a deeper understanding, but understanding is within your particular technical area of expertise. When you share your understanding with other disciplines, when you may not have the technical know-how to have the same understanding as an engineer or a different discipline expert, but you can make common sense. Making common sense is a key to development. This was a chart that allowed me to think about sense making after 9/11. Remember, 9/11 changed the world, and it didn't make sense. A lot of things didn't make sense. Now we are in the more darker phase. A lot of things won't make sense. So making sense is important. Pay attention. We come into an organization when we get a job, for instance. We are outsiders becoming insiders. Outsiders become insiders seeking internal validation. We don't know how the organization functions. We need to ask questions. The organization prepares to onboard us, onboarding programs, orientation programs, to socialize us, and to make working in the organization normal, easy, and rewarding. The key is each organization has a mission statement and vision statement and policies and incentives. How are they related to what happens in the organizations? Do the management walk the talk, or the words on paper and practice are two separate things? These are very important considerations. The key to building a good culture of quality is essential platform to mature in. It begins with smart objectives, smart performance assessment, and smart technology. For smart performance, safe, modest action, research, and testing are the key aspect of smartness that we want to bring in. Safe is to remove fear, number one. Expanding awareness via research and testing of assumptions, number two, is essential to practice modesty to master our skill sets. While doing the first time I did the training on culture of quality was at Apotex in Bangalore, India, many years ago. And when I showed this chart, a young lady from the crowd said, what does a pharmaceutical quality management system enabler do? A, B, C, D, I said. I had 4 things, so I used A, B, C, D. And she said, an effective pharmaceutical quality management system allows anybody to dance. It's as simple as that. So after onboarding or initial qualification, you are an insider and seeking goodness. Anybody can dance, not have fear, and making good practices normal, easy, and rewarding is fundamental to be able to mature in the system and improve continually. iSmart is a journey within and without. A smart fractal in the plan, do, check, and act spiral, which allows you to ask why, how, and what before taking action and after taking action, because nothing is perfect, errors will occur, but a good practitioner does not allow errors to recur to become mistakes. Self-authorship, making contemporaneous notes of how you think, how you feel, and what you intended at that moment is key to making sense of your emotions and how they interrelate with your awareness, your prior knowledge, your way of thinking, and therefore it's a tool to start understanding yourself and how to find solutions within you. Initial condition is key. Uh, Systems that exhibit extreme sensitivity to initial conditions are called chaotic system. We are in chaos. Begin with modesty. Keep your intentions clean. That's what my grandmother used to tell me. Principles. Be principled with your intentions. Step one is you acknowledge unknown unknowns, and in the areas where you know that you don't know something, unknown knowns, that's an opportunity to learn, to expand your awareness. When you know there are unknowns, as in the case of new drug approval process, you be vigilant, you focus on observations, and when you know what you know, you have knowledge, you have to pay attention. This collectively is the weight of evidence. Each, if you think of that as a multiple regression model, each one has a different weighting in case of different situation. My benchmark, the Kaifa-Harris Amendment 1962 after the thalidomide tragedy, was I could have been a thalidomide baby. I was born in 1961, so that is very personal to me. So what I have shared with you are in 3 dimensions: professional, cognitive, interpersonal, and intrapersonal dimensions, aspects of smartness. There are many other dimensions which I have not talked to you about. So think about scientific training and experience, build on it to assess effectiveness fairly and responsibly. Effectiveness of a drug, effectiveness of your work, effectiveness of your writing, everything you have to do, the same thing applies. A journey within and without. Smart individuals use smart technology and set smart objectives. That's Smart Cube, which is iSmart. Writing is a technology. Self-authorship is a way to progress your own development. So use social media objectively to share your experience. Don't just copy paste and forward things on social media. Utilize social media for experiential learning, and also utilize writing in professional settings to share your knowledge. Thank you for the opportunity for me to share my experiential learning with the intent of seeking common sense with you of 4 life in science lessons that I learned from going through the process, the journey towards pharmaceutical quality for the 21st century. The lessons are very simple. Care is research. Yes, knowledge is power, mostly intellectual property, but wisdom is in practice. Education and training is necessary, but not sufficient. You must learn to adapt. Adaptive learning or experiential learning is a key component which empowers our development, our smart future. And paying attention to professional development is essential, and knowing how to do that and knowing how to overcome the challenges that many face. Note that some adults continue to develop but at different rate. Many do not. And some that do not are imperialists that control our corporations and our institutions. And if we don't want to be enslaved by their technology and their policies and their mandates, we have to be smart. In the growing chaos, it is urgent and essential that we must be the change we seek in the world. Thank you.